Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Factory Must Grow episode 21. I am Krydax, and today we're joined by Xterminator. How you doing today, Xterminator?
I am doing pretty good. How about yourself?
It's a great day because Space Age is just about out. Those who are listening to the podcast itself, Space Age is already out by the time you're listening to this, which is very exciting. So we're celebrating release day with some Space Age talk because we both have had the media access this week, which has been really fun. So today we'll start with the mod spotlight as usual, which will be a little bit different. We'll discuss the last two Friday facts, and then we're going to talk about Space Age. One thing I do want to mention is that we will keep this podcast as spoiler-free as possible. However, we both have had access to play the game, and the media embargo dropped about a week ago. And so we're mostly going to be only talking about things you would already know about the game if you've been paying attention to the FFFs and listening to this podcast and such. But it's always possible we let slip a couple tiny things or two, and we're going to be talking about our impressions. So if you're wanting to stay totally like impression and spoiler free, this might not be the episode for you. And the next thing I want to do is thank the show's patrons. You guys help keep the show running. You help make the show possible, keep the lights on. And so huge thank you to you guys. If you'd like to support the podcast, head over to patreon.com/Krydax, and you'll see different benefits and links there. But for today's mod spotlight, I want to talk a little bit about mods for 2.0. So one thing that's been really exciting is that Wooba has given access to a ton of mod developers like weeks ago. As the LAN party had a bunch of mod developers at the LAN party, right, Xterminator?
Yeah, probably I would say at least like 30% or more was made up of modders.
Yeah, so that's huge, and I just love that, you know, as a company, Wooba has decided we're gonna have modding as a core part of our experience. Like, we're supporting it, we're actually in conversations with mod developers, and it's made the game amazing thus far, and it's gonna continue making the game amazing. And so there's a ton of mods that are already updated for 2.0 that you can download the minute you open up 2.0 when you launch it. And so rather than doing a standard mod spotlight where I just talk about one mod, instead I kind of went through the ones that were already ready for 2.0 from the more highly downloaded list. This is not a complete list, but I just wanted to kind of point out some ones that are already ready to go. So in no particular order, I think it's just sorted by downloads, but that's downloads before 2.0 existed. So I don't know exactly how it was sorting them. But Alien Biomes is ready to go, and that will only affect the Nauvis planet, but that's ready. AAI containers and warehouses is ready to go, along with AAI signal transmission, which is nice because that'll let you transmit signals between planets now, which is kind of a use for it in vanilla, well, Space Age vanilla, that we never really had before. The auto deconstruct mod that marks drills for deconstruction when they run out of resources. The milestones mod, factory planner is ready to go. Vehicle snap is good to go. Rate calculator and bottleneck light by Rygard, of course, are ready to go. There's a water fill mod, module inserter simplified, the fill for me mod, the stats GUI mod, merging chests, the editor extensions is good to go. Belt visualizer, Squeak Through 2. So there's a new version of it, and that's ready to go. And also even distribution light, which similarly I think has been redone by a new developer. So those are some of the more kind of common mods that I feel like we used a lot, and they're already ready to go for 2.0, but there's a lot more. There's already over 100 mods that are updated and ready to go for tomorrow. So that's really exciting.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's really nice to have this good selection of mods already, prepared. So you can use your standard ones without having to wait, days or weeks after release.
Exactly. And though they're not on the list yet, quite a few of the overhauls are already kind of prepped for converting over to 2.0, not to Space Age, but to the 2.0 update. So like Pyanodons itself is not going to be too far behind the release as far as being able to update to it and play in your game. There are a few breaking changes with the 2.0 release. We've talked about the fluid system changes that the game is undergoing, and that's going to change how your base works. Even though technically you didn't download Space Age, it still is going to change how fluids work. So a lot of little things will break, but for the most part, the transition to 2.0 is going to go smoothly, even for modded saves. So yeah, I just wanted to kind of point out that modding is something that's kind of a lot of mods have already pre-figured out what they're doing for 2.0, so you don't have to worry about oh no, there's no mods for my game anymore if you're a player who can only play with mods. And yeah, let's talk about the Friday facts. So 432 was all about Aquilo or
Mm,
Aquilo. I guess they pronounced it
yeah.
Aquilo in the trailer, but
Yeah, it's hard to tell. I mean, it could have been just an accent thing, but close enough.
exactly. So tell us a little bit about Aquilo, Exterminator.
Yeah, I mean, it is really interesting. It's a mechanic, it introduces a mechanic that we have not really had to deal with much in Factorio aside from some power, and that is heat. So you do deal with heat in nuclear power, obviously. However, Aquilo brings it to a whole new level as they showcased in the Friday facts, where you kind of have to use it throughout your whole factory because this is a frozen planet. It's the farthest planet from the sun, the star in Factorio, and it will just freeze. Your whole factory will just freeze if you don't heat it. And this is a really interesting mechanic because you not only have to find a way to produce the heat, but you have to route it around all your buildings to make sure they don't freeze. And then there's multiple resources. It's actually, I believe, it's the planet that has the most different resources, because it has like oil and then I think three or four new ones. That is, quite a lot to deal with, and they're basically all liquids as well, which is another interesting aspect I found.
Yeah, they
So,
mentioned you get the ammonia from the ocean. There's the crude oil, which is the same as normal crude oil. And then there's also lithium and fluorine as resource nodes on the map.
mhm.
So yeah, those are all, and those are all, yeah, fluid resources, which is interesting. And then yeah, the cryogenic plant also unlocks there, which is a building that we actually got the art for. I don't know if you remember, but it was forever ago. It was the one. It was like a Christmas
Yep.
FFF, and it had three little buildings, and one of them was the cryogenic plant. So we'd been wondering, like, what is that building all the way until now. Now we finally know what it was. It was the cryogenic plant, and they talk about you can make super coolant and some other fancy stuff there. I don't know what all can be made there because I haven't gone to Aquilo yet, but they do also mention a very fun new weapon, which is the railgun turret,
Mhm.
and that's exciting. It does. They mention it damages everything in a line, and so you literally are going to have to put these turrets like in front of your walls if you want to to kill biters with them or something. I'm not exactly sure how that'll work, but um, they have a really cool sound effect. So yeah, definitely go check out the FFF to see the railgun turret in action because that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a really fun weapon, but like you said, you have to be super careful with it. I actually killed myself with it. I accidentally ran in front of it one time,
Nice.
so it was definitely dangerous.
Are railgun turrets the new trains?
Seemingly, yeah.
Well, and the other weird thing, they mentioned this in the FFF. So it's the first building, I guess it more or less is the first building that can go diagonal because the
Mhm.
firing arc, it's not, it's kind of like the flamethrower turret in that it has a directional firing arc from where your building's rotated. And it's actually less than 90 degrees. So to get a full coverage, you actually have to have diagonal ones to kind of
Right.
aim at the corners. So that's another really interesting thing because it's a rectangular building that has 45-degree rotations. So that's kind of fancy.
Mhm.
But yeah, so on to the next FFF, which was 433. This is the final Friday facts before the release, so that was only a couple days ago now that they released this, and they released the trailer finally. I'm kind of
Yeah.
surprised they waited this long. Um,
Yeah, me too. It honestly, if I had to guess, it probably just wasn't actually fully done until
yeah,
until very recently.
Yeah, it's a really cool trailer though. So go to the website, go check out the Space Age trailer. It's got some new background music going. They've got a narrator actually, which I thought was interesting, and they kind of cover some of the basics of what Space Age is. It's a really neat trailer. And then they announced one more feature that's very exciting for the expansion, which is Mech Armor. And this
Yeah.
you thought Power Armor Mark II was great. Well, you're gonna love Mech Armor. What does Mech Armor actually do?
So it has several huge benefits. I mean, the first and most obvious would be that it has a larger grid size than a Power Armor Mark II, which is always good, can fit more stuff. It also increases your inventory size by a bit more, I believe. However, the massive thing that it does is it has a built-in jetpack. So this allows you, I know it's like, I mean, this is basically in a way squeak through in vanilla because you can fly over anything. So far, I've not found anything you cannot fly over. So you basically just become like completely untouchable as far as like running into things
It's
go.
like no
And
clipping mode,
yeah,
basically.
no clipping mode. You just go through everything, over everything. And it's really nice because one issue which they mentioned is like with a power armor, if you actually, if you got too fast, if you put too many legs in it, it would actually make it harder because you constantly run into things. But with the mech armor, you don't have that problem. You can just fill the thing with legs and go like ludicrous speed through your base and not hit anything.
Yes, I'm so excited for that. That's going to be awesome. And the other thing it does, not only does it jump over cliffs or buildings or whatever for you, it also will jump into the air to fly you over trains that are about to hit you or other. So if an object tries to move into you, it still
Mhm.
doesn't hit you. So it kind of is like no clip mode. You literally can't run into anything.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
Super hyped about that. Yeah, the inventory bonus is massive too. I think it's I was playing today and it's like 50 or something. It's absurd. So,
Yeah.
and that's without having a higher quality version
Yeah.
of it, and that inventory bonus only goes up further with more quality. So that's awesome. It was a fun feature that they kind of saved till the end. Now, one
Mhm.
question I have for you, which neither of us know the answer to this, even though we've played the game. Do you think they have kept anything back for release? Do you think there's something that will get added into the game with tomorrow's patch that will actually change the game that we don't know about yet? Or do you think it's all out there already?
Well, this is funny, and I'm not sure if you're asking this for the same reason I'm about to mention, but I did not think there would be because it seemed like they were just, laying everything out.
Mm-hmm.
But I saw some things in Discord going around, and I believe one or more of the devs kind of sneakily mentioned that there quite possibly could be something that has not been revealed. None of the beta testers and none of the LAN party people know about, something they've
Ooh,
kept completely under wraps. So I think there might be something,
that
and
would be
I
cool.
mean, none of us know what it is.
That would be really exciting. Kind of like the Spidertron for 1.0, where it was just
Yeah,
this awesome surprise. Maybe it's Spidertron 2.0. Uh,
right.
you can fly between planets in a super Spidertron.
Yeah.
I don't even know. Yeah, well, I guess we'll find out. Everyone here listening has the same odds as us to know what it is, because if there's something they've been hiding from the beta testers, I think that'll be really cool. So I think they probably did, and like you said, it sounds like there have been some rumors that some of the devs have maybe said that they did. So that's exciting news. I'm excited to see what that is, but I can't even guess what it would be. There's
Yeah.
the design space of this game is so big. A fun surprise could be anything, I feel like.
Yeah,
But
exactly. And I think that's great. I mean, coming in, there's already so much, but if there's just one more thing that no one knew about except the devs themselves, I think that's just a really fun aspect that they can introduce.
yeah, for sure. And it kind of helps the community, feel like they're on the same page too. Like nobody knew about this, so it helps it feel like fair or
Mhm.
whatever.
Yeah,
um,
exactly.
but yeah, so I do want to talk about space age quite a bit in this
Mhm.
podcast. That's the topic. But before we dive into that, I want to hear from you a little bit about who you are. So you are Exterminator. How long have you been doing content? Like, is this a newer thing for you? How long have you been doing YouTube stuff?
Oh boy, I have been doing this for far longer than it feels like. I've been doing this for, I believe, 10 years now, which is
Wow.
crazy to me to think about. I first found Factorio back in, I believe it was 2014, and I just found it and started playing, on my own. I'd watched some other YouTubers back then, and I, was like going around on the forums and stuff, and there was anyone who's been around a long time will remember this. Like from the beginning, they'll remember this, but there was uh, another YouTuber at the time called Fish Sandwich, and he was trying to put together some janky, crazy playthrough to simulate multiplayer because back then they had no multiplayer. and the aspect was basically to pass the save around. So like someone would play with it, save it, pass it to the next person,
Oh,
they'd
that's
play and
funny.
pass it. And that's the first content I did way back then. So I've been doing it since then, and it's crazy to think about that. Not only has the game been around that long, that I've been involved with that long. It seems more like 3 or 4 years to me. But time flies when the factory's growing, right?
It sure does. So, is this your main gig, or do you have another job on top of content creation? What's your
Uh,
world?
yeah, it's kind of gone back and forth. So, for quite a few years from when I started, it was just a side thing. There was no real like revenue coming from it at that point. But eventually it did get to the point where I was able to quit the job I had and do this completely full time for several years. And then, a couple of years ago, my expenses increased and all of that life and stuff. So I did end up venturing out a little bit. I would say this is still like probably like 60-70% of like my main gig. And then I do some other entrepreneurial stuff. I do a lot of e-commerce work. So it's kind of half and half, but I don't know, maybe we'll take over again with Space Age here.
Well, you won't want to do anything other than play Space Age, so you'll have to
Well,
become full time by default.
yeah, well, exactly. Yeah, it's I'm already becoming completely obsessed with it with the game again. So
That's awesome. So why Factorio in particular? Obviously you started a while ago and that was kind of the first game you were doing content for, but why stick with Factorio? There's all kinds of other games you could play, of course.
yeah, that's honestly a good question. I'm not sure I have a perfect answer for it. I mean, I've been a fan of like strategy games, RTS games for a long time, and while Factorio is not, strictly an RTS game by any means, I think it kind of like scratches that same part of my brain where it's like, just kind of puzzle solving, building up, evolving, growing, in an RTS, so maybe your army or your civilization or whatever, but in this it's growing your factory. And I just, I started finding videos of it on YouTube, and it was, and maybe not now because there's so many similar games, but it was like kind of the only game of its kind back then. Like it
Hmm.
was really unique. And just as with many people, it just captured me. I started watching videos and then just got completely obsessed with watching it and then playing it. And I mean, it just, Cractorio basically just totally took over once I actually bought it and started playing.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's one of those games that truly has, like, I don't know if there's a word for it other than just replayability, but the replayability factor is just massive because
Yeah.
it's such a sandbox game that, yeah, you can always do, like, the tech tree is the same every time if you're playing vanilla, but even then there's so many ways to approach it, and then there's so many mods if you start getting into modded stuff, and there's just so much. I feel like compared to a lot of games, there's more kind of room to keep making content, even though a lot of people have already made a lot of content. It's like, well, there's still more to do. There's always more to do. The factory can always grow.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why so many of us have just an absurd amount of hours in the game. So
Yeah, that's cool. So with Factorio content creation, I'd say you were definitely on the early end. What makes your type of creation unique? Like, what kind of creator would you say you are?
I would say I am very much I'm trying to think of like a proper term for this, but I would say I'm just like I create very natural and what I try to be relatable content in the aspect that uh I don't like I try to show people the actual process of failure and problem solving, and I make a lot of tutorials, I do some let's plays, but I also try to teach during those. And I've kind of just most like almost since I started tried to gear my content towards instructional, informative content and just like teach like my big kind of motto with this for myself is try to teach this as if like a friend was teaching this to you is just explain it as if you're just explaining it to your buddy sitting next to you and hopefully help people understand aspects of the game better.
Yeah, I love that. I love that because Factorio really is a game that has such a big range of people
Mhm.
playing it. You know, it goes from people who are like, oh, look at my first base, you know, and it's like two miners on a patch and then they have like one lab. And, you know, it's like it goes from
Mhm.
that kind of player to like the, oh, look, I made my 3000 SPM mega base blueprint that I can now paste 3 times to get a 10,000 SPM base. And you're like, okay, there's a wide range of players in this game.
Mhm.
So I appreciate that. You know, there's all types of creators out there and creators like you that are like, okay, I really want to like educate people with what I'm making. And I love the embracing failure because I think it just in general in our society that's something we're not very good at, that we need more
Yeah.
people reminding us like, hey, failing is an important part of progress, and it's good to not be frustrated when you make a mistake but actually just use it as a learning opportunity.
Yeah. Exactly. I mean, I completely believe that. And as cliche as it sounds, like, your biggest learning experiences come from failures. It's a lot harder to learn when you do everything perfect and you don't know what made it successful. But when you know what failed, you can take that and do better.
Exactly. Yeah, that's awesome. What are some of your favorite like pieces of content that you've done throughout the years?
Uh, I mean, there's different, I guess, categories could fall into. I mean, I've done some fun, like primarily train death montages, which were really fun. Maybe not fun in the moment when I was actually doing the dying, but the final result was pretty great and pretty hilarious. I definitely uh, just rewatch those sometimes just to remind myself, how bad I am with aspects of the game. um, and I honestly think like it's kind of a whole uh genre, but I just really love the Friday Facts videos. I love doing them. I love interacting with, the community and the viewers on those. And I think overall that is probably my favorite like piece or type of content that I've done.
Yeah, that's cool. It's been really interesting. You know, I've been doing the podcast now for a while. This is episode 21, and we've covered most of the FFFs on the podcast. And so it's kind of been, like you said, like it's been a really fun experience to get to discuss the Friday Facts. And obviously today we didn't go into a ton of depth because we want to talk about the game itself quite a bit. But the Friday Facts have been kind of this thing where like there's so much space to talk about the game design of Factorio throughout the process. And I feel like it's made us all better, even better consumers of the game, to understand better why they're making certain decisions and how they're making certain decisions.
Hmm. Yeah,
So,
exactly. It's just a really fun aspect to get a look into kind of behind the scenes of the game.
yeah. So let's chat about the game a little bit. So let's kind of rewind. You were a part of the LAN party, yes?
Hmm.
Trying to,
Correct.
yeah. And so you started playing Space Age about, what is that, a month ago from now? I don't remember when it was.
Uh, yeah, close enough. It was like the first week of September when the LAN
Okay.
party started.
And so you played obviously a ton at the LAN party because those were like 8 or 10 hour days for 5 days in a
Mhm.
row or something. And then did you get home and just immediately keep playing?
Uh, Kind of. Yeah. I mean, like got sick after getting home, which is no surprise. But after that, I definitely have been playing a lot, and I think I've gotten like I don't mean for this to sound negative, but I've gotten better gameplay in on my own than at the LAN party. I mean, because the LAN party,
For sure.
I mean, it's a little crazy there, but
Yeah, and
definitely a
kind
great
of
experience.
doing multiplayer, you know, with people you
Mhm.
don't know and trying to figure out everyone's kind of on slightly different pages. And yeah, I'm sure that
Yeah.
was fun chaos, but chaos nonetheless.
Yeah. Exactly.
So what's crazy is like the game is huge.
Hmm.
Something I've been saying a lot recently is that, and this is what I believe. I'm curious your thoughts on it, so that's why I bring it up. Is I think the DLC is bigger as a DLC than vanilla is as an entire game. Like almost the DLC is more than doubling what we have to access in terms of gameplay. Do you feel like that's true, or I don't know, what do you think?
I would absolutely agree with you. I think it is more massive than than they present it as, even though they have said it, adds a lot of content and more massive than a lot of people anticipate. It's like it sounds big, like, oh, we get 4 planets and a space platform building. But once you actually get into it, and I'm guessing you probably experienced this too, like when you get in and start playing for the first time and looking through the tech and the items and everything required to do these things, it's a massive amount of content.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, even just kind of designing your first space platform to build some space science, you're like, oh, this is a whole new ballpark. Like
Mhm.
it's not just a mod that adds another science or two that uses some new recipes. It feels so different to play. Um, and you've played a lot more than I like. I'm still kind of early on in the process because I just started last week with my playthrough.
Mhm.
So I've basically gotten to one other planet. I went to Fulgora first, and I've gotten to play quite a bit on Fulgora and make the science pack there. And that's all I've gotten to do. You've done a lot more. What would you give if you had to rank it out of 10? What's your out of 10 score for Space Age so far?
Oh boy. I mean, I want to preface it with like I don't really give anything a 10 out of 10. Just I mean nothing is perfect, period, but I would say I would give it like an 8 out of 10 and I would give base game a 9 out of 10. And I know like the only reason I'm not giving it a equal or better score is just because there's like a few teeny little aspects that I think are just a little problematic, but overall it is I mean it's still absolutely fantastic. I would still rate it better than like 90% of other games I've ever played.
Yeah, and we can talk a little bit more about what those aspects are in a minute because I'm curious.
Mhm.
But would you say that these are? Is there still room for like a 2.1 and a 2.2 update to raise that score for you? Do you think?
Absolutely. And the devs have made it clear, at least I don't know if they publicly said this, but at the LAN party, there's absolutely going to be a 2.1 and there might be a 2.2. And there's like some stuff that they're planning to put in. I don't want to spoil anything and I'm not allowed I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say, but there's some stuff coming in 2.1 that I think will improve a lot of aspects and would definitely bump up my score.
For sure. Yeah, and it has seemed, I was talking about this on the podcast. I don't remember who the guest was that week, but just with the later changes to Gleba, I think it was Trupin actually. And with the late changes to Gleba, it's showing us that the dev team is willing to take some risks kind of later in the development process because obviously that means they have less time to get all the little tiny things ironed out quite as well before release. So I do think the release is going to go quite well. I've played enough of the game to know that like it's a great game already. The release is going to go well tomorrow, or I guess today if you're listening on the podcast app itself. But at the same time, I have run into a few things that I do think could be improved. There are some little quality of life things. There's some UI things, I think is the place I've run into the most little kinks where
Mhm.
like, oh, I guess that sort of works, or oh, that doesn't quite work how I thought it would, or oh, that's kind of complicated to figure out, or oh, someone just gave me a tip that I can do this thing. How was I ever supposed to find out I could do this thing? It wasn't in the tips and tricks. So there were a lot of little things like that I've run into so far that
Mhm.
that I do think like if they can improve some of those things in 2.1 and 2.2, plus there are probably some little problematic features and stuff, but yeah. All that to say, I would give it a 9 out of 10 myself, I think. As for what it is, I think it does still need a little bit of work, but I would also give Factorio itself a 10 out of 10. So I think we're at a
Fair enough.
similar spread there. Um, okay, one question for you. What planets have you been to so far out of the five?
I mean, I've been to all the planets,
Okay.
but the ones I have the most experience with are Volcanus and Fulgura. Gleba, I went there purely because I was curious and immediately regretted it. And then Aquilo, I went very briefly again just to check it out. It was like literally the last like 3 hours of the LAN party that I went there. But yeah, I have at least touched down on every planet.
Nice. So of the mechanics, kind of I'll say like of the planetary mechanics, what have you thought about them? Like which ones are your favorites? Which ones feel I don't know, not enough or different to you or what do you like?
I think it's it's interesting because I think like Volcanus and Fulgura for me are almost tied, but for different reasons. like at the top. I think they're tied. I think Volcanus is probably, in my opinion, the best planet to go to first, just because it gives you such good building blocks to continue expansion from there with the foundry and the miners. And it's the most similar to Novice, but that's also, in my opinion, kind of a negative of it, is it doesn't feel like incredibly different. It is different, don't get me wrong, but it just kind of has like the same vibe to me. But I actually love Fulgora. I thought I would hate it, but the whole scrap mechanic and the way you process things there and the rewards you get from it are really fun and engaging, and the rewards are incredible. Um, so it may be my top planet. Aquilo, I don't have enough experience with to really give a good opinion. I think it's gonna probably be like my second favorite, maybe. And I mean, Gleba, there's like I know Gleba is a meme at this point,
It
but
is.
like in all honesty, and I don't like I understand why they did it the way they did, but in all honesty, in my opinion, like I would never go there if I didn't have to. I just do
Interesting.
not like the mechanics.
Yeah, and that's totally fair. I've said this on stream a couple times now. What I'm interested is after the game comes out and the memeness of Gleba kind of like dies out a little bit. You know, Troopin's 24-hour stream of starting on Gleba is a distant memory, and people have played through the game multiple times. I'm curious about how people will feel about it then, because it has undergone some changes, and there's even still some room for, you know, 2.1 or 2.2 to modify things even a little bit further. So I'm curious, kind of like after we've done it all and we're then continuing to like keep playing the game as people who have already experienced the game, I'm curious if Gleba will feel different. Because, yeah, there is this weird sense, at least for me, I don't know if it's similar for you, but something about the bio processes is inherently less interesting. And I don't know
Yeah,
why.
that's a really good way to put it. I was gonna ask you like how you felt about it, and it seems like, is it for you? Is it less interesting, or is there other aspects that bother you as well?
I don't know. Like, I think it's the most beautiful planet in terms of like
Mhm.
the actual biomes and the way it
Yeah.
looks and everything is really interesting. I think what's also hard is the other two planets have kind of very easy enemy mechanics, right? With
Yeah.
Vulcanus, the worms are there, but they're going to stay out of your business until you go looking for them. So you can that's almost like a checkbox. Like, do I have what it takes to kill a worm? Okay, I'll
Mhm.
save the game, go try to kill a worm, and see if it works. And then on Fulgora, you know, there's, you know, just safety from the lightning is the only thing you have to worry about. And so I'm
Mhm.
interested. I haven't been to Gleba yet, but I'm interested to see how the enemy mechanics feel. But certainly, it's more work to deal with enemies on Gleba than the other planets. And
Yes.
so
Absolutely.
that's kind of it's a downside in the sense that it's another thing that you know you're going to have to put more effort into when you get there. And so there's that. And then, yeah, I don't know what it is about the biomechanics, but it just isn't as exciting to think about seeds into plants. And what's weird though is I also really love the Pyanodon's alien life mod, which is also very bio thing heavy, but it's kind of turning the bio things into what feel like normal factory elements. So I'm not
Mhm.
sure. I could see myself actually really enjoying Gleba, but it's the interest level for me is lower. On like the going to that planet and doing those processes doesn't sound as interesting as the Fulgora like upside down tech tree scrap recycling, which I mean, I want to talk about that in a minute, but I have loved Fulgora. And then the Vulcanus, like the lava and being able to get infinite resources and use the big drills. I don't know. There's just like those are really cool, right? They feel big and punchy. Everything you do on Vulcanus feels epic. And Gleba is over there like, oh, we give you lots of cool things, but none of it feels big or epic or special. It's just kind of like, oh yeah, you go do this stuff. You get your stack inserters there. You get your Prod 3 modules. You get this new fancy bio lab that they came up with. The biter capturing is really cool. Like there's a lot of cool things, but they all feel it kind of feels like a random grab bag of cool stuff that you get after going to Gleba rather than like a tied together experience. You know, all the electromagnetic stuff feels like a tied together thing, and then all the like artillery, cliff explosives, big drill, all that stuff being in full or Vulcanus feels kind of tied together. So I don't know. I'm rambling, but those are my thoughts.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with all of that. I think a really good thing you said is it feels like a mixed grab bag of things, and not only in the rewards, but that's part of like what I don't enjoy about the actual mechanics is it seems like it's kind of a mix of just a bunch of different mechanics put together, which I'm not saying is inherently bad. I know there's people who enjoy it and will enjoy it. I just don't happen to be one of those people yet. But like you said, as I played through it a few times, my opinion might change.
How do you feel about spoilage kind of overall as a mechanic?
Uh, um, I think it's interesting and like I think it's an intriguing part of the game. It annoys the heck out of me. It like I will say one of the worst feelings I've had in Factorio is loading a space platform full of thousands of Gleba science and having them spoil by the time it gets back to novice and completely wasting the entire trip and resources.
Yeah.
So definitely problematic there for me.
Totally. And that's kind of one thing I've wondered and I'm excited to dig into the game myself is like it does it feel cuz certainly and when it was announced as a mechanic it was like ooh that's a risky mechanic as a developer because it's definitely a feel bad when your stuff spoils. And so obviously they have to design it in such a way that it feels compelling to want to make sure things don't spoil, but it's not such a difficult thing or a feel bad thing that you're adding more negative to the player than positive. And so I'm really interested to play with that mechanic because I've worried about the same types of things where it's like, ooh, what if you encounter one little hitch in your plan of getting science back home, and now all of a sudden, like you said, like 2,000 science packs down the drain. Now you just burn them in a boiler. Um,
Hmm.
so yeah, I'm interested to try that out because I think it's a really interesting game mechanic, and there's a lot of because then you're designing for just throughput and flow
Right.
rather than designing for buffers or things like that. And I do like that. I like that they're kind of
Hmm.
forcing the player to think about a different way to do it. Like I actually don't care if I have too much science doesn't do anything for me. I need to have just a certain amount and I need to keep that going consistently. And if I can
Right.
keep that flowing, nothing will spoil. So yeah, I am excited to try it. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, definitely.
So what about I want to talk a little bit about the non like content features because they were, featured in the FFFs and they're a little bit less exciting than a new planet, but at the same time I think for the actual longevity of the game and for what it feels like to play it, these are some of the most exciting changes. So the new fluid system, parameterization, the new combinator stuff, the ability to connect assemblers and things to wires to both read their contents and ingredients and recipes and set the recipes, train interrupt system. Tell me a little bit about those. What have you loved with all that?
I think that I think it's absolutely fantastic stuff. And I mean, to be completely honest, I have not messed with it enough to give like a deep analysis of it because it's a lot. Like it's a lot to, sink your teeth into and actually figure out all of these new uh, aspects. But I will say from what I've done, the like my favorites I think are the blueprint parameterization. I think that's incredibly powerful, and I've only scratched the surface. Like, if you are really good with the circuit network and like mathematical stuff and doing all that, you can just do incredibly powerful things with these, new parameters. And the same applies to train interrupts. It's basically like logistic train network mod built into the game and with potentially even more options. And then also the fact you can set assembler recipes with a circuit network is so nice. That might actually be like my most utilized thing yet. It's just incredible.
So what's your cuz I've played my run now for I don't know like almost 40 hours or something. What's your most common use case for setting the recipe in an assembler? Cuz I actually haven't even used that yet. And I haven't like I could see using like an omni crafter that like crafts whatever it is you don't have enough of. That's an obvious use case, but that's like a big project. Is there something more common than that?
I think I mean, one way I can think of and that I've used, although it's certainly, in fact, not necessary, but it's kind of nice, is to use it for things that have like a multiple step process. So inserters or assemblers or modules where they take very similar ingredients, or in modules case, basically the same ingredients, and you have to go up multiple levels. So you can change it and say like, if module ones are greater than X amount, change this recipe to module twos, and then it will craft module twos. And then if module twos and module ones are more than X amount, craft module threes, etc. It requires a little circuit network finagling, but it's not overly complicated by any means. And it's just nice. Sure, you could just build three different assemblers, but it's just kind of cool to have it all within one.
Yeah, well, and then the nice part about that is the factory's always making what you need. If you do five of those assemblers that are all doing that process, when you're only spending tier 1 modules, it's not going to have 3 other buildings that are off doing nothing. That would normally be only making the higher tiers. So yeah, I think that's a really interesting use for it. With the parameterization, I mean, I was able to make, without too much work, a little blueprint that's just, it's like a bot mall blueprint. So it's just an assembler, a requester, and provider chest, an inserter in, inserter out. But what it can do is it automatically requests into the requester chest whatever parameter you set. So when you paste down the blueprint, it basically just asks you, what do you want to build? And I'm like, oh, I need stack inserters, or bulk inserters, they're called now, the green ones. And what it can do, you can even put functions into the numbers that it plugs into things, and in those functions you can refer to the stack size of the item you're wanting. You can refer to the ingredient amount of the recipe you're crafting. And so what I did was kind of like what the vanilla game already does when you copy assembler setting into a requester chest, which is it will request, I don't know if it's 30 seconds worth of crafting. I don't know exactly what the number is, but it basically is a certain amount of time. But the thing that I've always found annoying is certain buildings that craft certain things really fast. If you paste into a requester chest, it'll be like, ooh, 1,200 gears. And you're like, oh my God, no, I don't need 1,200 gears. That's like 50 buildings worth. And so what I did is I set it to take the minimum of 2 values. And it was either 1 stack of the item or 60 seconds of crafting. And so that way, if 60 seconds of crafting would be 1,000 of an item, it'll just do 1 stack instead.
Wow,
and it can do that all automatically when I just paste it, hit the thing, and I leave. And it's so cool. And that, like, the parameterization is so powerful because you can do stuff like that. You can set it to change numbers. And then the new combinators, oh my goodness. The new decider combinator, just being able to have however many conditions you want, and you can and or them together however you want, means that previously there were things that took 10 combinators that you can do with now 1 combinator. It's so cool.
Wow, that's really awesome. I mean, what you've done with the parameterization on the blueprints is certainly more than I've gotten into yet. And it sounds like in general you're a lot more like in the know for combinator and circuit network than I am. I mean,
I'd still consider myself low on the totem pole. Like, you look at what Dosh makes with circuits and I my eyes glaze over, but I at least like to use it where I can.
Yeah, but I mean, definitely with the example you gave sounds amazing. And then same with the combinator, the decider combinator. I haven't had a chance to do a lot with it, but I do know that it's really, really powerful.
For sure. And I think what's there's also the whole new combinator, the Selector combinator. And I messed with it a little bit on stream one time just because I wanted to see like what you could do with it. I still don't personally see a ton of places where I'm going to need it for what I'm doing. But at the same time, I can see how it would be powerful if I wanted to do certain things. And I think that's what's really cool is they've added so many more tools to the tool bag that the engineer has to mess with their factory. And so people that are really into those circuit network things are going to have such a great time. But I also love that those aren't required to play the game. You don't need to do any of those things. You don't need to parameterize a single blueprint to beat the game.
Right.
And that's so cool because it just gives players this agency to play how they want. And I feel like we now have even more. It's almost like people that beat Space Age And
Hmm.
in some ways, this could be a bad thing, but people that beat Space Age are not going to be able to compare their playthroughs as easily.
Right.
Because it's like, oh, wait, you did what? Like, I didn't do that at all, but I still beat the game. Like, there's almost entirely different paths through the game in how you play now. Like, some people are going to play without train interrupts and trains at all. Other people are going to be like, oh, all I did was trains, and all I
Hmm.
did was parameterize this Omni Mall that everything was bought and combinator based. And other people are like, I built a base with belts and, you know, the
Yeah.
blood, sweat, and tears of running through the factory. So, yeah, I don't know. It's just, I love all this new stuff.
Yeah, me too. There's so much even just with these quality of life things that we just went over, that alone adds potentially hundreds of hours of gameplay, depending how deep you want to dive into it. I think no one except maybe the devs who created it actually know the full extent and depth to which these like train interrupts and parameterized blueprints can actually be used at this point.
Yeah, I think what's going to be cool is just to see what the community does with it, you know, once they get their hands on it this next week. And we're a few months in, because now the
Yeah.
base game just enables so many more pathways in what you're spending your time on. And I think that's the other thing is like with Factorio Vanilla 1.1, when you're playing the
Mhm.
game, there's only so many things you can be working on. You can always work on a blueprint, but that blueprint is going to be about feeding items into buildings, and then those buildings are, you know, outputting items, and you're doing something with that. And then there were the crazy combinator stuff things you could do, but you couldn't control buildings with them. You could, you know, and like now you can control buildings, you can control requester and provider chests with the logic. So now people might spend hundreds of hours just working on some sort of crazy combinator blueprint, and
Mhm.
that wouldn't have even been possible before. So I just think it's really neat that there's now so many more things to do. Oh, and we haven't even talked about the big elephant, the orange, pink, blue, and green elephant in the room, quality.
Yeah.
How do you feel about quality? I asked that to every guest so far.
I think quality is absolutely amazing and like one of if I don't know if I can say the best yet, but one of the best things they've added in the expansion. Like for me, in terms of excitement level and what I want to do, it is like right up there with going to planets or even above it potentially. I think it's just incredible.
Did you are you just like a dirty like quality rusher? Like the moment you got quality, you were just throwing quality modules and everything and totally sidetracked?
Uh yeah, a little bit. I mean, I think it can kind of get a little addicting once you start doing it and seeing the results that come out of it. And it's also really good to do it as soon as you can too, in my opinion. I know you mentioned to me, you said you kind of went down a rabbit hole with it, right?
Yeah, so I didn't do a ton on Nauvis. I did go get like an uncommon tank because that
Mhm.
actually increases the equipment grid size, and
Right.
it increases the range of the weapons on the tank too, which I hadn't even considered. And so there are a few things like modular armor that are really nice, and if you can get some of your space platform things to uncommon, that's nice. But it's so expensive when you don't have recyclers. The only way to get uncommon or rare stuff is to get lucky when you craft the item on the first try, and you can't loop anything back to recycle. So I didn't do a ton before I got to Fulgora. But once I got to Fulgora and I got the recyclers, I just immediately had to make these crazy loops, and most of my resources on Fulgora are just being wasted rolling for rare accumulators and whatnot, and it's amazing.
Mhm.
And like my brain is just asking like, okay, the goal is maybe tier 2 quality modules of
Mhm.
the rare four. So rare T2 modules. But
Right.
then my brain is like, well, wait a second. So if I feed it with rare red circuits, blue circuits, and rare quality
Green
tier 1
circuits.
modules, then I can make them directly. So the
Mhm.
question is, should I do that? Or should I just make regular, you know, tier 2 modules and then recycle that in a loop, like when,
Mhm.
and then it's like, well, I could upgrade one of the things, but then I'm going to get stuff in the wrong ratios, and just the types of questions that quality makes you ask yourself. It's broken me in the best way, where I'm like, I don't even know how to play this game anymore. I feel like I could do 40 different things and I don't know which one I want to do. They take different amounts of work. They take different amounts of resources. I don't know which one is the best return on investment. And that's really fun to not know, because then you're like, well, I guess I'll try one of them and see if it works.
Yeah, exactly. I think that I experienced the same thing, and I really love it because it kind of brings back that feeling of when you first started playing the game. Is like there are all these options. Which one is best? Well, I don't know. I'm just gonna try all of them and see what happens, or I'm gonna try one and then try another later. And I love that. And I mean, I've messed a fair bit with quality, and I still don't know what the most optimal or correct, quote unquote, like way to do it would be. Uh, but that's awesome. Like you said, I mean, I love just experimenting with it, and seeing which way, gives me the best results and which way I find most fun and such.
Yeah, it really, I think what's fun about Space Age, and something that I just want to like commend the devs for, is they've made the game feel new again.
Hmm.
When you add all of these different changes together, not only is it all the new content, but there's all the new systems underneath the content, like the train and combinator and all these other mechanics we've talked about, and many we haven't even talked about. You add that all together and you get what honestly feels like a new game. It's
Yeah.
still Factorio. It feels familiar in a lot of good ways, but it is
Hmm.
so different. And I think it's awesome because it, whether you've got, 10 hours or 10,000 hours, I think you're going to feel kind of like a newbie again. And it's really cool.
Yeah. Yeah. I think they've just done an incredible job with like kind of reintroducing that whole new exploration aspect of the game.
Yeah. I am curious to revisit a couple of your, some of the things that you thought were maybe not the best or things that could be better. If they're not too far on the spoilery end of things, I'm not sure if it's more content related or not, but
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty similar. It's pretty similar stuff to what you mentioned earlier as well. A lot of just kind of quality of life, finicky like UI things or process things of like how do I actually achieve this. It I will be completely honest and say that it was much worse at the LAN party than it is now.
I bet.
Like it was pretty poor in terms of like how much stuff was actually intuitive versus not. But they did an excellent job improving that. So at this point, my main complaints are, like you said, just small small things that seem kind of like oversights to me. For example, I know this seems really small, but there's multiple of these things that add up, like creating train groups. Well, you can't create train groups in the train group menu. You have to create a train group by finding a train and then going to make a new group within the train. And again, it seems like really nitpicky, and it is, but when there's a lot, like when there's multiple of these things, it kind of adds up to make it a little bit disjointed, in my opinion. Um, Also, the way rockets work, like a huge thing for me, is the way sending materials to space platforms work, I think is not intuitive because as you experience as well, the rocket will only send things up in full stacks. And not only that, I guess this is kind of a spoiler, but I don't think it's that like impactful like for ruining people's experience, but um on top of that, the silo won't even request anything unless you have the full request amount in your network. So if you're requesting, you know, like 1,000 circuits on your space platform for some reason, the silo won't even put in that request to start fulfilling it unless you have 1,000 circuits currently in your network. And I'm not saying that's bad inherently, but it's just not pointed out anywhere. Like if you submit this request and the silos aren't working, probably a lot of people are going to be wondering what is going on. Why is this not actually doing what I want it to do? And it's just not like things like that just aren't really indicated very well, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah, I found some similar things, and I think there are going to be a lot of bug reports, I put in
Hmm.
quotes, in the first month or two here that aren't actually bugs, but just people not not that it's their fault, but they're not yet understanding how the game works. And I think those are the spaces where the devs can really do some work on the tips and tricks and do some work on the UI feedback so that little things in the UI are a little different so that they lead you to understand how it actually works a little quicker. Um,
Hmm.
One thing I've actually wanted multiple times, and it like as far as my complaint is the quality when you're selecting like filters and trying to filter things, the quality mixed with different item selections can get really messy. Because like with a splitter, you can filter off any item of a certain quality or higher or whatever. So I could filter off like rares or higher, go to the right, everything else goes to the left. And that's
Hmm.
fine. But once you select an item,
Right.
you when you're filtering an inserter, for example, you can't say iron plates of quality uncommon or higher. For whatever reason, that's not a filter you can set in an inserter, even though it's a filter you can set in a splitter. And so it's just weird that there's certain things you can and can't do, and sometimes it feels like I should be able to do that, but it's
Hmm.
not letting me, or am I doing it wrong? And maybe there's probably a lot of things I am still unaware of. Like I found out today, there's a shortcut. Maybe you tell me if you know this. Control or no, Shift Alt and then the scroll wheel while you're in an area that has quality will change the quality you have selected.
I did not know that.
So if you're
That is a new
building
one.
like an assembler and you have just normal assembler selected and you hold Shift Alt and scroll up, it'll change to like a ghost of an uncommon and then a rare. Or even when you're selecting a filter,
Hmm.
there's that little menu at the bottom where I could be like, oh, I want iron plates, but I want them to be uncommon. And you had to go down and click uncommon. You can just hold
Right.
Shift Alt and scroll while your mouse is anywhere and it'll change to the uncommon uh, version.
Oh, well, that's really helpful and really nice. But again, I probably never would have found that out if you didn't
Exactly.
tell me.
Yeah, someone in my chat told me, and I about had a heart attack at how awesome it was, and I'm like, well, this
Mhm.
should have been in the tips and tricks.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
Yeah, so it is an amazing game in the hours that I've played so far, and um I'm very excited to see people's responses, and I just think it's an incredible game, and I can't get enough of it yet. And yes, there are these little nitpicks that we have, but at the end of the day, they are little nitpicks. Like most of what you're doing is having an insane amount of fun.
Yeah, exactly. It's really easy to focus on and remember the negatives of something more so than the positives. And but the thing is, overall, this is an absolutely amazing game with the content and the development team. I mean, I could talk forever about how great the development team is, especially after meeting them and experiencing their processes in person. It really just shows how awesome they are.
Yeah. What are some of your because a lot of people are going to be starting a fresh save, right? And so they're not going to be on Fulgora or Vulcanus first. What are some of your thoughts on how the novice experience feels, or novice, however we pronounce it, before going to space at all?
It's interesting because I think it is largely unchanged unless you purposely seek out doing things differently in regards to, you could have a very different experience if you focus extremely heavily on train interrupts or using parameterized blueprints, although that's not necessarily novice specific. But in my experience, building from like when you spawn, and land on novice to begin with, up until you launch a rocket to space, I found it to be very similar to what it has been. And I don't think that's necessarily good or bad. They don't want to change that part of the game drastically necessarily. The main difference I would say is the quality of life changes just generally affect your gameplay. They make it way easier and more fun once you learn them. And then two is the biter changes. The biters are definitely more difficult now, and that's like the main thing I noticed.
See, and that's interesting because I feel like that's still a place where the game just maybe has variance too high. Because I went with all default settings and the biters were quite easy for me. I like
Interesting.
Yeah, and so I think a lot of it has to do with like tree placement and biter. Like, did some bigger bases spawn closer to you or not? Because I mean, I had to deal with them from time to time with tanks, but for the most part, I'd say it felt pretty chill. I also started later than you did, so it's possible they rebalanced it. Um, you know,
Hmm.
not that long ago, because I know I had seen some people talking about it on the Discord. But yeah, there's a lot of interesting things, and it's also interesting that now enemies are kind of necessary because the nests will show up even if you turn biters off, but you can still do that. One thing
Mhm.
that I really liked was the new terrain generation on Nauvis. It felt
Yeah.
like a new planet, even though it was the same planet. Like they really revamped how things spawn and feel. Cliffs and water and trees are all so different, and I loved that.
Yeah, that is definitely a really big change. It makes it feel new, and it also just makes it a lot easier to play on. The cliff spawning not only spawns really cool looking cliff systems and maybe more realistic, they're just also less bothersome. The way they spawn, and same with the trees, and the fact that there's these like natural paths through trees and cliffs. It does make a huge difference.
Yeah, it makes it actually fun to drive a tank around to kill biter
Mhm.
bases because you
Yeah.
don't constantly have to run into either a forest or b a cliff or c both at the same time.
Hmm.
But yeah, one other thing I felt on Nauvis is even though you're right, it is still very similar. You're still building a furnace stack to smelt iron plates. Like that hasn't changed. What's different is you don't have to go as far to get to space in terms of
Right.
through the vanilla game. Because now, and I don't know if this was, I think they mentioned it, but it didn't. I didn't get the feel of this from the FFFs. Is that space science is just after blue science, chemical science, and now the pink and yellow sciences are actually at or past space science. You can kind of do all three of those in whichever order you like. And so that's a pretty big difference. And rockets are way cheaper. So you can
Hmm.
actually launch things up to the space silo. People who are hearing like, wait, I have to build how many rockets? And you're still thinking about rockets that cost 1,000 low density structure. They're way cheaper now. Don't worry. You get all the rockets you want. So it is cool that you can go to space a lot sooner.
Yeah, definitely. It is really nice to be able to get space science sooner and build your first platform. In that aspect, it definitely kind of accelerates things. And while technically you could even leave novice and go to another planet right after blue science and you research the planet you want to go to, that is you're probably going to have a very bad time. That's a little bit of a one-way trip, I think.
Yeah, you wouldn't even have like assembler threes to go with or anything if you do that.
Yeah.
But there is an achievement, I believe, for going with only one of the two of yellow or purple science. Um,
Okay.
I think some people thought it was without both, but I think the achievements actually you can pick one or the other and not both. So that's interesting. But yeah, it's cool. The tech tree is a little bit less linear, both with the purple yellow space thing, and now also
Mhm.
obviously the three planets. You can choose whichever order you want. And some people were asking me like, can you go to all of the planets kind of at the same time? Like, do you have to go one after the other? And the answer to that is like not really. You can
No.
research all three. They're the same cost once you have space science, and you would just have to make sure you take with you to the planet the materials to build a silo and a rocket to come back, because
Yeah.
you don't naturally just get a free silo on the other end. So if you wanted to come back, you are going to need to make a rocket. But if you do that, you could go to another planet, play for 2 hours, hop on the silo, come back, go to a new planet. You could mix and match. I think most people are probably gonna like play out one planet and then go to another one though.
Hmm. I definitely think so too. It would be incredibly overwhelming, I'd imagine, to establish like a little base on every planet and then to attempt to not only manage them but also to keep them alive, but specifically on Gleba,
Uh huh.
because it's just gonna get completely stomped on.
Yeah, I am excited to fight the enemies on Gleba. But yeah, okay. What other like general thoughts do you have that you want to share before we wrap up here on Space Age?
Man, I mean, we've covered so much. I think that people are just going to have a fantastic time. I think it truly cannot be like really understood and experienced, or really understood how much content there is in this and how many possibilities there are until you play it. We have these weekly Friday facts, and the devs go into more depth than almost any other dev team does, which is great. But I will say from experience, like, and you did too. I mean, you just started recently too. When I got into the game and first started playing, it was truly like a mind blowing experience. I was like, am I playing a totally different game? This is so much new stuff, and it's incredible. I think people are gonna have a lot more to do than they can even like imagine at this point.
It really is like we're all kids on Christmas getting a new
Yeah,
toy. It's better than that, maybe.
yeah, exactly.
Who needs Christmas when you have Space Age?
Yeah, exactly. And then you won't even you may miss Christmas playing Space Age. Just let it go
Exactly.
by.
Yeah, I think we're gonna see a lot less people over the next couple weeks in the forums and Reddit and Discords and YouTube and all that. Everyone's gonna be busy.
Mhm.
Well, man, this has been great. I've had such a good time playing the game, and it's been really fun getting to hear your thoughts on it too.
Yeah, it's been awesome. It's been a lot of fun talking with you about it, and I really appreciate you having me on here. I'm curious if you have thoughts, any additional thoughts on, Space Age or just 2.0 in general, like
I
experiencing it.
I mean, I have so many thoughts. I could talk for 3 hours about it. I feel like you and I are similar in that, because it's just the game design of it is so good. I feel like just talking about how the devs have done things is such an interesting topic. Um, but mainly, I just have loved on Fulgora how much my brain has been almost in pain, like a good pain, but like I'm like,
Mhm.
what do I do? What do I want to do? How do I do it? And I've played thousands of hours of Factorio, and I mean, I haven't beaten Pyanodons, to be fair, but I've played a lot of Pyanodons. I've played Bob's Angels. I've played all these different complex mods,
Mhm.
and I was not expecting to feel as confused and like I
Mhm.
don't know what I'm doing as I
Right.
actually am. And I love it. It's so fun. So that's kind of my biggest takeaway, at least right now. I mean, we could talk all day, but I just
Yeah.
feel like I am really enjoying the feeling of newness that I've been getting so far. And I think, like you said, people are going to be shocked by that, and they're going to feel so like the game is so fresh.
Yeah. Exactly. I couldn't say it better. It feels like a completely fresh game experience.
Yeah. One other quick question for you is, what content do you have planned for the coming weeks? What's your content plan? What can people look out for?
I have probably more planned than I'll be capable of doing, but I have a Let's Play going on my YouTube channel that I plan to continue. We just got stranded probably on Fulgura there, so that's going to be fun. And then a lot of tutorials. I have a whole list of tutorials on different aspects, like making your first space platform, probably a tutorial for each planet, etc. Also, mod spotlights. I love doing mod spotlight videos, and we're going to have a massive amount of new mods and updated mods as we went over earlier with 2.0. So there will be plenty of stuff going on after tomorrow.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, great to hear that. Everyone listening, make sure you go check out Exterminator's channel. Where can people find you? Is it just the YouTube channel? Do you also do Twitch? Do you have Patreon? What are all of your socials?
Yeah, so I have my YouTube, which is just YouTube/Exterminator, and then I have Twitch, which I stream on several times a week. I'm Exterminator 5 over there, and then my Discord. I do have a Patreon as well, which is just Exterminator, I believe. But definitely my YouTube is my most active currently.
Awesome. Well, yeah, everybody, make sure to go check that out. And yeah, I think with that, we're going to kind of wrap up the podcast here. So as usual, if you'd like to support the podcast, you can head over to patreon.com/Krydax. And we stream the cast on the first and third Sunday of the month. So we'll be back on, let me look at my calendar. November 3rd will be the next cast. And we'll be, at that point, 2 weeks deep into the public release of Space Age. And I'm sure there will be a lot to chat about then. And so, as always, you can follow the Krydania Discord for any updates on the podcast times or things like that. And yeah, if you guys as listeners have ideas for topics or guests that can be on the cast or anything like that, let me know either on YouTube or on the Discord or wherever. Put a link in the description. And with that, any last thoughts, Exterminator?
I don't think so. I'm really excited. I hope everyone has an absolute blast playing tomorrow. And just thank you, Krydax, for having me on here. It's been a ton of fun talking about this with you.
Yeah, agreed. It's been great having you, and to everybody playing the game, just enjoy it. You only get one first play, so enjoy playing through it. So with that, thanks for listening, everybody. We'll see you in a couple weeks, and always remember, the factory must grow.